Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Knowledge Box and Cooking. Today I'm going to explain the Kerala Board 12th Standard English lesson, that is Adventures in Banyan Tree, that is written by Ruskin Bond, Indian author. Adventure in Banyan Tree is a beautiful short story written by a well-known Indian author, Ruskin Bond. He describes his wonderful childhood encounters with nature in this story. When we read his story, we experience both the beauty and wildness of nature. Ruskin Bond spent his childhood in a village near the town of Dehra at the foot of the Himalayas with his grandfather and grandmother. There were numerous trees, birds, and small animals sought refuge beneath tree leaves and in bushes. There were always the sound of these birds and animals. We can deduce from this story that his grandfather was a great lover of nature. Grandfather had not destroyed birds and animals' habitats. Grandfather had always taken care of his home surroundings. Additionally, grandfather purchased white rats from the market. The grandfather was unable to reach the top of the banyan tree. Grandmother teased him constantly and made comparison to the of Desmond. Countess of Desmond was an English woman who died when she fell from an apple tree at the age of 170. Skinbon's grandfather, like that elderly English woman, was a diligent worker. However, due to his physical infirmity, he was unable to climb the banyan tree. Ruskin Bond considered the banyan tree crown to be his domain. The banyan tree was older than grandfather, the house, and the town of Dehra combined. Ruskin Bond formed an attachment of grey squirrel. At first, the squirrel was fearful, however, when it was discovered that the author was not holding a catapult or a air gun, it became more receptive. Later on, the squirrel developed the courage to jump into the author's pocket in search of food. However, the squirrel relatives and friends regarded the squirrel as arrogant and foolish for trusting human beings because they believe humans are constantly destroying their habitat and assaulting them with an air gun or capped up belt. The banyan tree was abundant with red figs during the spring season. Numerous birds and small animals would have made their way to the banyan tree in search of these figs. During that fig season, the banyan tree was the noisiest spot on the road. Ruskin Bond had constructed a small platform at the banyan tree summit. He would spend his summer afternoons there. He had read nearly all of the world's classical while seated on that platform. He would have observed his surroundings from the top of the banyan tree in the interim. He frequently observed grandmother washing clothes or arguing with a vegetable vendor while grandfather spent time in the garden. He once witnessed a vicious fight between a snake and the mongoose beneath a banyan tree inside the house the grandfather and grandmother were. He observed the fight with interest. The cobra was an accomplished and skilled fighter. He was able to move at the breakneck speed and strike at the speed of light. Additionally, the cobra's venom was lethal, 3 feet long, was a grey mongoose. Cobra was well aware that Mongoose was an excellent fighter, cunning and aggressive. Cobra's body was raised and his hood was spread. He launched an attack on the mongoose. Mongoose tail was burst. The mongoose tail was covered in thick hairs and had protected him from battle bites. Apart from the author, Maina had a jungle crow were also on hand to observe the battle. It gathered around the cactus to observe the outcome. The cobra attempted to hypnotize the mongoose into making an error. However, the mongoose was astute. He was well aware of the cobra's classy, unwinking eye strand. As a result, the mongoose avoided looking into the cobra's eyes. It was a championship about. Nobody could predict the outcome. The crow and myna flew towards the snake and the mongoose in unison but collided. They made their way back to the cactus plant. The birds flew towards the fight side once more but collided and returned to the cactus plant. The third round was markedly different. Birds flew towards the snake and the mongoose once more. They did not collide. However, halfway through the fight, the myna decided not to participate and returned to the cactus plant. However, the crow flew directly towards the snake. However, the cobra whipped his head back and struck her. The crow was discarded and died. However, the myna did not intervene further in the fight. It was merely observing the attraction. The cobra was dwindling in strength. The mongoose continued his attack fearlessly and eventually killed the snake. The snake was dragged into the bushes by the mongoose. The hyena congratulated the mongoose with a shrill cry and flew away. Ruskin-born descended from the tree and informed his grandfather about the fight he had witnessed. He was ecstatic to learn that the mongoose had triumphed. Grandfather had encouraged the presence of mongoose in the garden. The word of he fed it scraps from the kitchen regularly. However, he never attempted to domesticate it, knowing full well that a wild mongoose was more useful than a domesticated one. Mongoose would have stolen the eggs from the poultry house, but grandmother would have forgive him for preventing snakes from entering the house. Moral of the lesson is the beauty and power of nature, the wonders of childhood, and how the passage of time is experienced through connection to a stable living symbol like the tree.